Hello, welcome to Stageworthy. I'm Phil Rickaby, the host and producer of this podcast. Stageworthy is Canada's theater podcast, and on Stageworthy, I talk to theater makers of all kinds, from actors to directors to playwrights and more. If they make theater, I talk to them. Some of the people I talk to are household names, and the rest are people that I really think you should get to know. I am talking to you after a day at the Toronto Fringe Festival, so I am hot, sweaty, tired, but energized. If you are watching on YouTube, do me a favor and like this episode, leave a comment so I know that you were here. And if you like Stageworthy in general, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so that whenever a new episode comes out, you'll get notified that a new episode is available. If you're listening to the audio version, make sure that you're subscribed. Go to your favorite podcast app, search for Stageworthy, and hit the follow button. And while you're there, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please consider leaving a rating and a review. Your ratings and reviews help new people to find the show. So that would be hugely helpful. I do want to mention briefly that I do have a Patreon where the people who are my patrons help me to make the show. I will talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show, right before I tell you who my guest is next week. But this week, my guest is Natalie Kaye. Natalie is a playwright and poet and is the writer behind the Toronto Fringe Festival's 1920s Walking Around in a Dream, which is a 1920s retelling of A Midsummer Night's Dream. I love Midsummer Night's Dream, and I love that era, having worked with Keystone Theatre and silent film plays for quite some time. I am hugely looking forward to this show, and I really enjoyed this conversation with Natalie Kaye, and I hope you will too, because here it comes now. Natalie Kaye, thank you so much for joining me. You have a show at the Toronto Fringe. You are the playwright of 1920s Walking Around in a Dream.
That is correct.
Could you, what is 1920s Walking Around in a Dream?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. This is so amazing and exciting. Yes, 1920s Walking Around in a Dream. I just call it my dream play, but it's essentially started as a project where I was contemplating translation and how odd it is that when you study Shakespeare in school, they give you modern translations of Shakespeare, but I mean, Shakespeare, it's English. So it's kind of just, I don't know, there's something puzzling about that. And I'm not even saying there's anything incorrect about that. I mean, it's far enough away from us. It's foreign enough that, it is kind of strange. So it started as this sort of project of mine to consider translation from English to English, because my French is not good enough to do the traditional route for translation. And essentially, it turned into what it is today. I can talk more about that later, but it's essentially a screwball comedy set in the 1920s in Chicago. It's a musical, and it's based on Midsummer Night's Dream, and it's on at the Fringe.
One of my favorite plays is Midsummer Night's Dream. It is, as a play, it gives you so many opportunities to win the audience over. It gives you, there's so many great bits in that. But also it's been adapted many times. It's been adapted, like it was an opera, it's been a ballet, it's been so many things.
For good reason, I mean, ripe for
Yeah.
adapting, but
It is interesting, that idea of when you're in high school, there are these modern translations
yes,
of Shakespeare. It's such a strange thing to me,
it
because
really
listen,
is.
we weren't allowed to use those when I was in high school. I'm an old man. They were like,
It was
Cliff
like
Notes,
cheating
Cole's
or
notes. They'd
whatever.
be like, "How dare you?" And they made us like try to figure out what the text actually said. But
Yeah.
again, maybe it's not such a bad thing to have the translation. What did you love about Midsummer Night's Dream that made you want to create this adaptation?
Honestly, because the project began as sort of an experiment. I wasn't specifically thinking, "Oh, Midsummer Night's Dream." I really wasn't. In fact, it started with the sonnet, "My mistress eyes are nothing like the sun," because it's just a little chunk, a little sonnet. I thought maybe I can like translate this into, what ended up being 1920s jazz age slang, which is a very heightened language in itself. And it just began this process of translation. And as soon as I finished that one sonnet, I was like, there's potential here. Uh, and then I was kind of dumb and I decided to translate an entire Shakespeare. It took years and years, so much research. At one point, I had over 70 pages worth of dictionary just for my own personal use of jazz age slang. Just so weirdly enough, that was the shorter, easier way to be translating. So it's been a very long journey, very long project. I think I think once I ultimately decided I wanted to try to do a full play, I mean, A Midsummer Night's Dream is just so there's first of all, there are a number of different plots and you can pick and choose, and that's what I ended up doing. So it's a little bit more in sizable chunks rather than like an entire meal. I thought maybe I can just and what I ended up doing was I just focused in on the four lovers. So Demetrius and Helen and like just the little chunk there. And I have little references to Oberon and Titania and all that stuff, but and even the players, I have sort of references to those, but it's a little bit more manageable to just focus in. The other thing is that I really felt like I'm asking a lot from the audience with this one. It's not Shakespeare, it's not Shakespearean language, but it is a very heightened language. Lots of slang, lots of metaphors, a lot of it is in rhyme. It's just quite rich. And you're kind of being thrown in the deep end. And I thought probably the most commonly seen Shakespeare play that you're taken to is A Midsummer Night's Dream. And like you said, it's been adapted so many times. Even if you haven't seen the original, you might kind of recognize the plot or some of the characters. Or just little, what fools these mortals be. You might just kind of have heard that somewhere and not know where. I also knew that I wanted it to be very light and sort of fit the feeling of like a screwball comedy or like it sort of matches the vibes of like being drunk and crazy in a forest and maybe falling in love with this person, then in love with this person and just the confusion and the madness of that. I thought was just very fitting for the jazz age as well. You're sort of just prohibition, you're getting drunk and you're sort of making mistakes and going so fast and, running around and having love affairs and everything. So I just thought it matched the vibe, yeah?
Yeah. Well, what is it that drew you to the 1920s, the jazz age?
Well, first of all, I am a fan of it's just like very interesting era for me. First of all, I just think that there's like you have the post-war sort of malaise, right? Like all this idea of like huge tragedy and like very like intense emotions going on. And then the sort of reaction to that being like, well, live fast, die young. You know what I mean? Like, let's just drink and be merry and let go of a lot of the morals and different institutions that were from the previous generation. It's just, there's something like so free and interesting about it.
It
And
makes a lot of
I think it's
sense
complex.
because of I know I was doing a lot of research into World War One for a project that never went anywhere. But
Now
like
it's going somewhere.
one of the things that people noted was that when the men came home from that war, they basically all decided we're never talking about this.
Yeah.
And so they
PTSD.
never processed any of the things they saw or did or that happened to them. So of course they would turn to debauchery and booze and
Any coping
everything else.
mechanism.
Let's
Yeah.
have fun so this stuff doesn't catch up to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And meanwhile, you have the women who finally got a taste of freedom and empowerment. While the men were away at war, they had just tasted some freedoms that they weren't, didn't have as much access to, let's put it that way, previously. And then suddenly you're like, no, 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 get back in the home, get back in the kitchen. You're like, what? What? Like, but I tasted freedom and I liked it. This is just, I don't know, it's just really rich. It's a really rich era. It's also just interesting because it's not just light and bubbly and fun the way that people kind of think about it in a more superficial way. Like there are some deeper things, like you say, the sort of like post-war traumas and all that. And I mean, alcoholism for that matter. I mean, there's so many things going on that aren't just light and bubbly, but there also is the light and bubbly. And that's why I
Yeah.
think it's so fun to play. And when people are witnessing that, when the audience can just like watch and enjoy and laugh at it, then hopefully later maybe they'll see the, a little bit deeper layers. Like there are little touches here and there in the script about like, the Great War and how it sort of derailed people's lives and like I was on a certain pathway and then the war kind of interrupted my life, things like that. But it's just speckled in here and there.
Yeah.
So it's not too you can dig for those layers if you want to.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It is a fascinating era. You've also got all of the silent film stuff going on
Yes.
and some of the stuff that like the building blocks of modern film in that era, of which we only have a fraction
Oh,
because it
I
was
know.
all so flammable. Like we've
Yes.
lost so
Yeah.
many films that we only know the titles to and things like
Yeah.
that. And so many film stars that we've barely seen because we think Charlie Chaplin,
Mhm.
Buster Keaton, but there were, Douglas Fairbanks, but there were
Yeah.
hundreds, thousands of people that we don't think of because their films are lost.
Yes. And also just in general, it's actually the silent film definitely had an influence on this play as well. It's not as strong, but it's definitely there. There was like we had sort of a media watch party for the cast. It was like 3-4 hours, I'll be honest, because I just couldn't get the clips short enough, like. But it was basically a lot of the filmic inspirations that inspired the play, and I had like Demetrius is a boxer in this version. So we were looking at like the Charlie Chaplin classic boxing scene, the Harold Lloyd boxing, like the physicality of those actors are just so amazing. And I also took a lot of inspiration for the character of Andy or Lysander from Harpo Marx. And I just think it's so delightful that like it's definitely a lot of vaudeville influence for sure. But there's something about Harpo where he's a silent film star in the sense that he doesn't speak.
Yeah.
Or even when it's fully into sound pictures, it's kind of this like reference back to that I thought he's just so magical. Now he can communicate with just like a little horn.
I mean, they are. I mean, the Marx Brothers were vaudeville artists as well. Like
Yeah,
so many people who ended up in silent film
mhm.
were vaudeville. So it
It's
all
definitely a good through line. Yeah.
is an excellent through line.
We also have
Um,
like some Mae West influences on Helen. Like
yeah,
there's a lot of vaudeville going on. Vaudeville, silent film kind of moving up.
yeah. I have
We
to
have a
ask,
ring as
when you were
well.
doing your silent film stuff research, were you able to watch any Mary Pickford?
We did watch one singular clip because again, I was trying to get down hours and hours of footage to just, something digestible. But as you were talking, I actually was trying to look up Theta Bara because she was sort of this like the vamp, the vamp character. And I wanted she has some influence over the Helen character. And yeah, there was an entire video that it might have been Cleopatra. I don't remember off the top of my head, but there was an entire film where they only have like 5 minutes of footage. I'm like, oh man, this would have been perfect to show.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you find it. I remember when I was working on a silent film project ages ago. We were watching a lot of silent film, and we were only able to find one Mary Pickford film, and it was just like 2 minutes
Was
into
it
the film,
Keystone
and you
Theater?
realize why was America's sweetheart. It's like she walked on screen, and everybody fell in love with this
Yeah.
actor, right? So just incredible.
Are you talking about Keystone Theater?
Yes, yeah.
Wonderful. My sister mentioned that she saw I didn't get a chance to see it, but it was a Klondike theme. Oh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
literature?
She saw that one.
She
Yeah,
was
yeah.
very impressed with that and kept you in mind for actually, she was kind of thinking, like, "Should we talk to you for advice on this project?" And that was years and years ago before we, were even close to producing anything like this, so,
Yeah, yeah.
she was very impressed by that. Yeah, I think we also have some, Clara Bow. There are a bunch of references to Clara Bow as being, like, the it girl, and, like, the flapper. It's just a very interesting time,
Yeah.
and all the expressiveness, you
Oh yeah.
know, and how it
Yeah.
influenced the makeup and all the personalities, and
Absolutely.
it's amazing.
Absolutely. It's always interesting because talking about that vamp character, and I'm thinking there was one of my favorite movies was Singing in the Rain, and there's a character, peripheral
This
character,
is a very
Zelda,
good
who's like
influence on me.
the
Yeah,
vamp, which is
yeah,
probably based on this person. And
100%.
it's funny that you see these things, these tropes that come up and we don't get them now, but they were so huge at the time.
Oh, 100%. Like, actually, Singing in the Rain is one of the biggest influences. If I kind of have been saying roughly, I mean, the amount of influences, it's innumerable, but if you sort of took, like, Marx Brothers, Singing in the Rain, His Girl Friday, and then Shakespeare, and, like, stuck them in a little blender, that's sort of roughly where you find, 1920s Walking Around in a Dream.
Yeah. Now you were talking about the dense language of this play, the 1920s slang, which is interesting to take a dense language of Shakespeare and to translate it into a further dense language in a
Yeah.
1920s slang. You mentioned having your big dictionary of slang terms and things like that. What like how when you started this project, how much did you think you were going to go into the slang? Did you think it was going to be a big part of it?
As soon as I finished that first sonnet, I kinda hit a crossroads. I was like, "Am I gonna do this or not? If I'm doing it, I'm doing it. I'm committed to this." In the full sense of commitment, like, I probably should have been committed. It was a crazy venture, but I knew I wasn't gonna go halfway, and I knew that that meant I had to put in just as much research as possible and as much time as possible. I mean, we have weeks and weeks and weeks just sitting in Robart's library, like, copying from different slang dictionaries and, well, obviously watching different examples of, like, movies or any other footage, doing research and everything, and it did hit a certain point where I mean, I knew that I'd have to differ from Shakespeare in a number of ways. I knew I'd have to make different choices. And I also knew that this had to be sort of a fantasy realm. So it's what I'm calling an imagined 1920s era Chicago. So I know that there are certain things that I'm quite aware aren't historically accurate, but I'm aware that they're not, and I made those choices on purpose. It's just something if something's funny, it's in. You know what I mean? Yeah. If something is just, like, too good to let go, then I'll keep it in, but I was trying to be very precise. And the other thing that had a huge influence on what I thought I could show or tell is how okay, there's 1920s Chicago, the actual people talking and doing their own thing. They're not talking like this. They're not talking in heightened language. There's also Shakespeare's era. They're not talking in heightened language then either. There's also actual Shakespearean language, then there's modern Canadian language, and it's all these different things that sort of I had to have a balance between everything. I knew that there were certain words that if I used, like bimbo, for example, there's a good example, or maybe goon, frankly. I don't know, I won't get into it, but there are different words that very much will be interpreted differently to the modern Canadian ear. Even though the meaning meant something else at the time, so I was trying to pick and choose very carefully.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it can also be it can be forgotten that those words existed. It's the
what is
historical writer's Tiffany problem. Do you
mm,
know the Tiffany problem? Which is
I
like
won't
the name Tiffany is historically accurate. You can go quite far back with it. But if you use it because now we don't
oh,
think of it as having
Tiffany's.
been like
Mm,
an old name,
mm.
people will like throw up their hands and be like, "That's ridiculous." The name Tiffany appearing in this historical novel. You have to be careful with the words that way too.
What? Yes, exactly. Like, I mean, obviously, words evolve, language evolves, and I don't know, it's just it's such a delicate balance because I wanted to have a foundation of research, accuracy, all that, but also have the allowances for just playfulness and being able to communicate to the audience. I actually one of the books that really, strangely enough, influenced me, um, was A Clockwork Orange, which you wouldn't expect. It kind of feels like it's coming out of left field. But,
I wouldn't have expected
I
that.
mean, he
No.
sings Beauty in the Rain at one point, so but
That's true.
it's because it's Anthony Burgess just did an incredible job of introducing the reader to the language of the world. He didn't talk down to the reader. He stuck him in the deep end, but he repeated certain words in certain ways and he gave context clues so that if you're patient and you just stick with it, you're slowly going to learn those different words. And I thought it was just such an incredible feat that a lot of my writing is influenced by that, not even this in particular.
Mm.
Just the idea of like, you're not talking down to the audience. You can throw them in the deep end and just trust that they're gonna hopefully swim until they can like, find their sea legs. Or that metaphor kind of went weird, but
Yeah, no. I mean, because Shakespeare is like that too, right? You
exactly,
can the
exactly.
first scene of any Shakespeare play is really about acclimatizing. Like,
Yes.
by the time that scene is over, for the most part, the audience has their brain is shifted and now they understand what's being said.
Mhm.
So if the actors know what they're saying and they play it well,
Yes.
then that language barrier doesn't exist.
That's what I'm hoping for. I've tried very carefully. So there are certain phrases I've used more than it true as steel, or I don't know. I don't have specific, or there are certain phrases that I reuse on purpose so that you might not know it the first time, but with context clues, eventually, you might get them. I've used a number of different, there's so many amazing words for being drunk, understandably. And, I just would stick in my favorite ones, but it would always have, be within the context of someone who's drunk. So that I'm like, hey, let's introduce a bunch of different words, but in a very playful way where you can pick and choose. And you don't have to understand it perfectly because the actor's telling you, we're like, oh, he's fried to the hat. And then he takes a swig, right?
Right.
So I was trying really hard to make it like you're thrown in the deep end, but like just hold on. Hold on a little bit, please. Like
Yeah.
you'll understand, hopefully. And in the meantime, hopefully you're distracted and entertained by people just doing silly things and singing songs.
You alluded to the length of time it took you to write this play. How
Yes.
long were you working on this for? Because you know what, my first solo play, I wrote. It took me 8 years to write that, and I'd probably still be writing it today if I hadn't got into a fringe festival. So, how long were you writing this for?
I know it's 10 years. I know it's 10 years. I don't know exactly how long, but it's a long time, but it's a little bit deceptive because it's not like I was writing this. It was always sort of on the back burner. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just kind of how it was. I would like dip my toe in it. It's such a like immense piece that I had to take it in chunks and I had to go with like how my mood was. Can I handle all this? So it's at least 10 years. I wasn't keeping track, I'll be honest. And to be honest with you, there was another thing that happened when I decided to actually take this on was mentally I had to decide if I was okay if this never got produced. That sounds a little dismal, but it's just something I had to think about because both me and my sister are playwrights. We put on our own productions all the time and also other people's writing. We've sort of, so we know what we're doing in terms of producing in Toronto on a small budget. And I just knew that, again, this is a dream project in many senses of the word. I knew that, typically speaking, we will write plays that are 4 actors and under, not set in a specific historical time, not a lot of singing and dancing and props and moving pieces, pretty, simple contemporary writing, that sort of thing. We tried to just be very practical, and this play is not practical. It's the biggest cast we've had. It's there's singing, there's dancing, there's props, like so many props. There's a set that like we have to build and make, and costumes. Obviously, they're very like it's very specific in terms of the date and time and historical setting, and the language is so dense and thick, and the acting style, the modern acting style doesn't suit this piece very well. It is sort of like, a vaudeville type actor that would, bring this out a lot more. And there aren't as many of those around these days. So it's just very ambitious. And I'm just delighted that it's finally being produced. It really is a dream come true.
I think that, sometimes it is important to produce things that are not quote unquote practical, right? Because so many times there are theaters who are like, oh, if it's more than 3 people, we can't produce it, or 4 people is our absolute
Exactly.
mask.
Yeah.
There's almost no opportunities for big cast shows, on like the play level. Like we don't get to do those like outside of festivals, right? And like Shakespeare festivals, like Shaw, Shakespeare, the Stratford, that sort of thing. But it is like important that people get to stretch those legs and like write it. At what point did you decide you were going to enter it for the Fringe?
Honestly, it was my sister. She was like, you know what, Nat? It's time. I don't even care anymore. Shut up. We're doing this. I think it was also because it's 1926 and the play originally was set, I think, 1927 or 28. And she's like, you know what? This is perfect. 100 years later,
Yeah.
let's just do this thing. That's kind of what happened. I have had sort of a staged reading of this done years and years and years ago. That's also when I decided I'm like, I don't know if we can actually fully produce this, but I'd love to. Um, but other than that, this is the first time. I mean, it wasn't a musical at that time. It's changed. The script has changed significantly since then. So it's just like so crazy to see it like come to life. It's it's really amazing. But like,
Yeah.
I'm really proud of it. Like proud of like just the cast and the crew have been so amazing. They're working just so hard. It's amazing. I know that's just a theater thing a lot of the time. Like you just have to work so hard. But
Yeah.
it's just I don't know, it's just incredible.
You have worked as a playwright. You've been a director, producer, actor, and dramaturg, and I believe a choreographer.
I've dabbled.
Do you primarily identify as a playwright, or do you shift how you identify yourself based on the role that you're playing in a production?
Sort of both. But if anyone asked me, I'd say writer. And I'd just say actually just writer rather than playwright because I don't I just write whatever style or thing. Typically it's fiction, but it might be poetry, it might be a short story, it might be a play. I sort of like let it be whatever it's gonna be. So probably writer, but definitely I just sort of show up and do what needs to be done, which is very typical of like amateur theater. You just sort of like go and show up and suddenly you're doing the props, suddenly you're doing costumes and makeup. You're doing promo videos, that you're suddenly the videographer for the day. Like, you know, you sort of just wear many hats.
What is your theater origin story? You mentioned that your sister's a playwright, you're a playwright, you're a writer. How did you get exposed to theater and how did you decide that it was a thing you wanted to be involved in?
Interesting. This also was my sister's fault, if you can believe it. I specifically remember I was 3 years old and my sister put on a play for the family, like just, ma and pop. And it was Cinderella. I played Cinderella and I had one line. You wrecked my dress. And she played every other role. She wrote, she directed, she produced everything, costumer, everything. That was actually my origin story. And she subsequently would put on plays in grade school and all the way up. And I was always, the little sister, the little baby, the little whatever role needed, the little mouse, the little whatever, all the way up. We ended up going to theater school as well. I went to York, to Glendon actually, which is like the little French college for theater and English. And then both me and Nina actually got our MA in drama studies at U of T. That was very interesting because we were about a year or two apart from when we were both attending. And we don't look that similar, but for some reason, people kept mistaking us for each other. It really was Shakespearean. It was like Comedy of Errors, where someone would just come up to me on campus and start, massaging my arms, like, "It's so good to see you. Like, it's been so long." I'm like, oh God, actors are so touchy feely. And then it turns out, no, he just thought I was my sister.
Well, I mean, you both do have names that begin with N. You don't
We
look
sound
alike.
similar, right?
Yeah.
We
But
looked more similar at the time. And there was one insane incident where we were in the exact same play in theater school at the same time, same play, different characters, obviously. We were on stage at the same time at certain points. And someone came up to my sister later and said, how did they do that? How did they have you on stage twice? Did they use mirrors? How were you on stage? How were you doing it? It's like, I think that's a little far.
So you must have Something about your sister bullying you into theater or like pulling you into theater must have stuck
Oh God, don't
because
tell her that's what I said.
no.
No,
We're
that's
not
great. That's
not
true.
not bullying. I mean, the thing
Yeah,
that's
you know,
my word, but like you were
she did. That's fine.
dragged into theater, but you
Yeah.
must have loved something about it because you're still doing it. You went to school for it, you know. So for you, like, what is it that you loved? What made you want to keep at it?
I think that there, art in general is just so many things to so many people. It's just, it can be so many things. And theater for me, oh my God, it depending on my, the time of day, my mood, the type of, just all sorts of factors. It can mean so many different things, and that's what I find so fascinating about it. It can be therapy. It can be a way to communicate. It can be a way to build a community. It can also be a way to let out rage. You know what I mean? Like outrage in a sort of more controlled environment and like purge ideas. Uh, it's also, frankly, a really amazing way to deal with control issues in a slightly more, controlled way. Where I I have, especially as a writer, as a playwright, as a writer, I write my little script, or big script in this case. I take my time, I research, it's all in my control. I do every single little thing exactly how I want it. And then it's given to other people. And I have to just accept whatever happens. It's the most incredible exercise in relinquishing control and collaborating with people. I think it's quite beautiful, actually. It's also, I think theater really attracts some just incredible people, especially amateur theater, because everyone knows you're not in it for the money. You're not in it for the fame. You might be in it for power control things, but let's put this aside. For the most part, people are doing it because they just love it and they'll just put their whole heart into it. And it's amazing because so much of it is just the journey, and the process is like, it makes everything. Like when when the audience sits down to watch a piece of theater, they only see like the tip of the iceberg. They see like just the last little bit. Uh, which is, I don't know, it's so interesting to go behind the scenes, quite literally, and just peek behind the curtain and have a sense of like, oh wow, that's where that started. Those are the peaks and valleys that this went through to get to this final, place. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, there's something magical about it. I also feel it's sort of like when theater is good, it's the most incredible thing. It, makes you feel, makes you cry, makes you feel connected or scared, or it can affect you so much. When it's bad, it's very bad.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it hurts your soul, or at least with me. And I
yeah.
feel like with a lot of people when they go to plays or theater, I think a lot of people don't necessarily feel that way. And that's how I know that I'm made for the theater. Because it hurts me. The theater hurts me one way or another. Either it makes me cry out of happiness or out of
You were mentioning about how as a playwright you really have to trust the people who take on your work. They say that film is a director's medium. It's rare that anybody knows who wrote a movie,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But theater is a writer's medium, they say, because
Oh,
the
yeah.
playwright's name usually people know the playwright's name. And yet the playwright has so little control once the play is given to a director and a group of actors. You've
Mhm.
done what you can. You put it all in the play. You also could have like tried to be like, this is what I want in the stage directions. And they're just going to ignore
They
everything
do
in the
whatever they
stage
want.
directions and do their own thing. And you have to hope that you put
You have
enough
a
in the
vision.
text to
Yeah.
make it work. It is such an exercise in trust.
I agree. I think one thing that's really helped me with that is, actually, to speak to that, I know that there are some, I think it was David Mamet, but there are certain writers who even try to embed their stage directions so that, the director isn't allowed to get rid of them. So, oh, my dear, you look beautiful in that long red flowing red, dress.
Right. Yeah.
Your blue eyes look lovely in those glasses. So I understand. I understand that feeling. But I do think that something that's really helped me is trying different roles on being the director and having to work with the script. It changes everything. Working with your actors. I just did the choreography for a short horror play called The Matchmaker. And it was so interesting because in the stage directions, they had a real slap, like an actual slap. They had some fight choreography. They had certain movements, in the stage directions. And I was fully on board with that. I thought it would look really good. I thought it was great. When I saw the theater space, I knew it would be impossible to do. It was just too small. Like the distance between the stage and the audience was so small that you'd have to actually just slap the actor. And I didn't want them to do that. I just didn't. Otherwise it would read like a fake slap. So we ended up making it a lot more stylistic. And also in terms of layers, like I knew that I couldn't have her like on the ground rolling around or something. The audience couldn't see her. So these are just minimal examples of how sometimes when you're the director, you're not making changes purely because, you're evil or something. Or because you disagree with the original vision even. A lot of the time, you're just trying to problem solve, frankly. And that's really helped me a lot. To realize that even if my vision, my script and everything, I've worked out everything and I know exactly how it should be, in the space when it's, that's a piece of paper, ultimately. It's a script. You have to, things will change when it actually gets up on its feet. Even just having someone say the lines out loud is different than how they're written, And it's like with George F. Walker, I remember reading one of his plays, and it was the most depressing thing I've ever, just so depressing reading it. And then I saw a production and I was laughing the whole time. And it's a perfect example where theater is meant to be performed. It's not going to reach its full shape until it's actually performed. And that's why it's a collaboration. It has to be. And there's something amazing about it. You do have to trust people, but also I've found a lot of the time that, if a play's bad, a play's bad. You know what I mean? You've tried your best. If you wrote the script, you did your best, you put in the work beforehand and something goes awry, it can kind of mess up for any number of reasons. That's another really important thing to remember is if the lighting guy forgets the cue, no one's watching the play.
Yeah.
He's ruined the play. So it's sort of this fragile, really interesting experiment.
Yeah. Oh, you were talking about how, hearing somebody read a line out loud it can be different from how it's written on the page, which is why that's so important as part of the process of like the writing process is to hear people say it and figure out, oh, that is so, I thought that was great, but that is so clunky.
Yeah.
And
For
the
the
only
audience
way to
to
do it is
read
to
it.
have actors do it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest things with this play actually is that I needed to hear people say it. I really did. I didn't know how it would go until like we finally sat down and did we were just sitting around the table and we just like did the reading, and we actually did what I was calling a semi-cold reading because there were a few people who had access to the script earlier just by the way that things worked out. And most of the cast didn't know what they were getting into. And I purposefully said, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw you in the deep end. And please just, if you don't know a word, try your best, keep going. Because I really wanted to get the information of like someone who's a first reader, like first encountering this piece. Because I didn't know how much people would understand. And it ended up shocking me and going so amazingly. Everyone was laughing the whole time, which gave me a lot of hope that it would go okay. But it was sort of like 5 minutes leading up to it. I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know what we should do. I guess we'll go with it. I guess we'll try. But I was like in full on panic mode. Like, I don't know if this will work. I don't know if they'll understand it. I don't know if the audience will get it. We made it.
You have quite a history of plays at the Fringe. I'm seeing Mood Swings in 2016, Siren in 2018, and Number One Clown Comedy in 2025. And
Yeah.
this is now another one. What does the Fringe mean to you as a playwright, producer?
Mhm. For me, the way that I think about Fringe is sort of like a little buffet, like a sampler platter. I think it's one of the easiest ways that I've found to introduce non-theater people to theater. The prices start at $5. It's like 5 to 15 roughly, and they also have lots of free events and different things going on as well. Um, but it's just a sampler plate, you know? You can go to a little comedy and you're like, "Oh, that wasn't quite to my taste." Then you try a musical, you know? Then you try some it's just like there's a whole variety. The variety is crazy. There's, I think, 123 shows this year. It's just that's quite a buffet. So I think it's just a perfect way to, yeah, to get people out to theater. I think it's a lot harder to sell to say, "Oh, we're going to, Mervish or something, and it's gonna be $120." It's a musical. It's a new musical. You haven't seen it. You don't know anything about it. Good luck. And it may or may not to be to your taste. It's just a harder sell. But with something like this, it just gives opportunities for people, yeah, to bring in more audience because we need it.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because I remember years ago I was an usher at one of the Mervish theaters, and I worked the door for certain periods of time, and that's when you heard what people actually thought about this show.
Oh my
But
god.
but because they've paid so much for their ticket, they never wanted to say, "I didn't
Mm,
like that show."
yeah.
And so they would find ways to be positive about it, but you would really figure out that when people said things like, "Everybody did such a great job," they did not like the show. It's like the
Seriously.
code it's code
Yeah.
for, "I paid a lot of money, I didn't like it, but
I
I
don't want
can't
you to
quite
admit.
bring myself to admit that I did not like that show."
Oh, I've been there.
And but it's so, like, fascinating to, like, get to witness that happen as an audience, like, tries to delude itself into having enjoyed the show they paid a lot of money for.
That's also like in Singing in the Rain when they watch the preview and they come out, they're like, "She was the well,
Yeah.
oh, that Lena Lamont."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're like, "What?"
Except Lena thought it was great because it was good and loud. I liked it, yeah. If any
So
listeners have
long.
not seen that film, they really must. You really have to
Oh, it's
watch
amazing.
Singing in the
It's about
Rain.
the transition between the era when there was silent pictures moving into sound pictures, and it sort of has everything in it that you can want.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite, like, one of my favorite things about silent film, Charlie Chaplin kept silent for so
Yeah.
long.
And just some sound effects. What
Sound
he
effects,
was he
also,
will do that.
there was a gibberish song that he sang, and
The waiter,
it
the
was all to
notables.
keep from speaking
Mhm.
because he said that when the tramp speaks, he dies.
Yeah.
Which means that when he filmed The Great Dictator and had a big speech at the end, that was his sacrifice of the tramp
Yeah. To
for
the
the
war
cause that
effort.
he believed in, which I
Yeah.
think makes that
Beautiful.
speech mean a lot more to me.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. We actually the, nonsense song was part of my watch party.
As it should be. Oh, what that that is in which film is that in? That's in
Is it Modern Times? I don't
it
know.
is
I don't remember.
Modern Times.
It
It
is?
is Modern Times.
What
Well
do I
done.
mean?
Modern Times has my absolute favorite bit where Charlie Chaplin is walking down the street for some reason and looks really determined, and then somebody hands him a flag, and then he's leading a protest, and then he gets arrested. Like, it's just, like, such a visual gag that, like, could only happen in film and only he could pull it off. Yeah. Just, like, so good.
I love it.
But you mentioned you have a master's in drama from U of T. You and your sister both? Wait, is it an MFA?
No,
No,
just
master's in drama?
singing.
I
Yeah.
know a couple of people who have MFAs, and I always say, motherfucking artist."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
mean,
Yeah. Um,
fair.
Now, how, like, because that's a very academic aspect of theater schooling. Has the academic work or the academic training been useful in the creative practice, or was it like more of a means to an end for you?
Honestly, I had been working in theater for so long before I even touched a foot into schools. Like, I also went to an arts high school, Rosedale. So I even before that, though, I was doing theater on, like I was saying, so technically since I was 3, I don't know if you count that as a public performance, but I think probably my first public performance would have been I was probably 5 or 6 years old because I was in JK and I played a role in, again, a Phantom of the Opera, actually. My sister wrote in a role for me being Christine's daughter who she's recounting the tale to. So I don't remember if I even had a line, but I've just been performing and working on the practical side of it for much longer. So this was a lot more. I mean, I love this. Obviously, I'm kind of a word nerd, and I like to do research on things. I definitely wouldn't call myself a historian, but I like to have at least a foundation, a solid foundation. I like to do good world building, whether or not it's sort of fantastical or not. I just think it's a lot. I don't know. I just appreciate that in other works. When even if it's some nonsensical society where it's like some crazy futuristic thing where they don't need to have rules. The world doesn't need to have rules technically, but they do. That's so impressive to me that there's something that the writer has really thought through and dedicated time to, because I feel like it proves that the writer has put in a lot of thought and time and effort, and in the hopes that the audience will do the same. And I don't mean they have to dedicate 10 years of research. It doesn't have to be that committed. There's only one crazy person in this project, but just the idea of going in and having patience, and again, it's trust. It comes back to trust, because we talked about having a crew that you can trust and a cast that you can trust to deal with your work, but it's also the audience. The audience is just a major participant in the whole experience. And it's a participant that is kind of the most chaotic one. You won't really know what they're going to do. They haven't been at rehearsals. They don't know when they're supposed to laugh. That's happened to me so many times when my punchline kind of just floats and then they laugh at the next thing. And I'm like, wait, what? I'll
Yeah.
take it, but okay.
It is a fascinating experience to present a new work for an audience the first time. One of the first I remember one of our early Keystone Theater shows, we were presenting it at the Toronto Festival of Clowns many, many years ago, and there's that moment where we think the first laugh is,
Mm.
but we don't know if the audience is gonna do that, and we're just, like, backstage as the play is going on, just like, is it gonna play? Is it gonna happen? And then it does, and you're like, "It works the way we think it does," which is a fascinating and harrowing experience to have the first time.
Yeah. Especially because 'cause you've been living with it so much. It's just so hard because, again, like, this is a musical. We've turned it into a musical, by the way. Like, that was so simple and easy. So this version of the play is now a musical. We've
Mm,
taken the tunes from Jazz Age songs, and then Declan Meager, our director and musical director, has done arrangements, new arrangements. And we worked on lyrics as well, where I took a lot of my original monologues and soliloquies and have transformed them to fit these tunes, these melodies. And it was a lot of work, a lot of effort. And the reason why I brought it up is, first of all, to brag, but second of all, I am realizing that we have to now pause for, hopefully, for the audience to clap and react.
mm,
And
yes,
that is not something at all that in the original script I needed to worry about. And I don't mean worry, I just mean, I had to think about, because that will change, the flow of the show. And it also might increase the length of the show. And
yeah,
Fringe is very, very particular about the length of the show.
yeah.
So it's just an interesting thing. That's like one more factor that I'll have to kind of wait until the night. Not even opening night, because frankly, every night will be different. I mean,
Yeah.
you might not get anyone clapping. I have no idea. I really don't. There is one song in particular, I'm not sure how it'll go, because the singer gets interrupted in the song by tripping over a
Oh.
drunken character. So I have a feeling you might not be clapping. You might get laughter. I'm hoping, but
Yeah, that's a tough question because you have to be able to get your cast to be able to
recover.
um stop and give the audience a chance to applaud. But if it's not there, to just keep going. And
Keep going. And like, do
it
you
is a
react
very
to it? Do you
difficult.
stay in character? Do you freeze? You
Yeah,
know? What do
yeah.
you do?
I
I'm
think it's
very
important to
excited
look
see.
at, like, if you could watch like filmed musicals, like filmed stage
Mm.
productions, see what they're doing. Like, what do they do when the song is done? Because I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know what the answer to that is.
I think it's sort of up to the production. I
Yeah.
think, and what I think is so wonderful about this production in particular is just that I love the cast. They're so fun. And I think I'm totally, like, going back to trust, maybe in my head, Andy was a certain way. Like, he was partly inspired by Harpo Marx. Like, he does speak. He has a lot of lines and facts, but just certain feelings about the way that Harpo is, where he'll just randomly stick his leg up on someone's arms, and suddenly, like, this is very confusing and chaotic. But so I had this sort of image of what Andy would be and what Dimitri would be when I was writing it. And a lot of that has completely transformed, because obviously each individual has their own interpretations. And I love this Andy. He's wonderful. I love this Dimitri. I think I'm just so happy to let them do what that Andy would do in that moment. I think that Andy might take a bow even. I don't know. And I think I personally would be fine with it. I think maybe it's up to the director.
Yeah.
Frankly, I also need to let him decide. But I personally, I've gotten to this certain point where these are their characters now, This is their interpretation. And I think I'm so excited to see what they do.
I think
Yeah.
that's the most healthy thing you could do as a playwright, is to
I
be
think-
able to be like, I did my part and now it's theirs. That's all I can do.
Well, yeah. That's the hope.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're drawing to a close, as we are recording this, it is, a few weeks before Fringe, a couple weeks before Fringe
Couple weeks.
starts.
Something like
Um,
2 weeks.
What are you looking forward to about having this play out there?
Well, I mean, I was tearing up the other day. I was talking to my friend about it, how this has just been such a long project. I didn't know if it would ever be produced. And the fact that it's just up on its feet is already enough for me personally. I mean, I don't know that the cast would be happy if we just stopped now, and I don't want to. But I feel like I'm good. I'm already good, whatever happens. And I'm mostly just excited to see the reactions. I don't know. I don't know what they'll be. I'm really hoping that people enjoy it. I think they will. It is a good show. It actually just is. I know it is. I've been watching it. I've been laughing. I've been entertained. I've been so delighted. And it's just growing and becoming even more itself. So I already know that I've done my best. Everyone is doing their best. And it is a good show. So all the rest, I mean, the rest is applause. I was going to say the rest is silence. I'm like, no, that's the opposite.
Role
The rest
play.
is up to the audience. I should also mention that after the Fringe, we already have a remount, which is incredible. It's going to be it's going to be an outdoor production at St. James Park, which is at Church and King. It's going to be in August. You can find out more information at unspokentheater.com about that. But it's
That's
a free
great.
event, a free outdoor event. So we're very excited about that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to 1920s Walking Around in a Dream at the Toronto Fringe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Stageworthy. Before I get to who my guest is next week, please let me tell you about my Patreon, because I can't do this show without the people who've chosen to back me on Patreon. Even though a podcast is given to you for free, there are costs involved with putting out a podcast. I have to pay for a website. I have to pay for hosting the audio files so they can be distributed to all of the podcaster listening places. I need editing software. I have to pay for transcripts and so many other little things that come up that increase the cost. And because of my patrons, I'm able to afford to do all of that. I am covering the cost of those things. I'm not currently being paid for the time that I put into the podcast, all the time scheduling interviews, doing research, performing interviews, editing the episodes, and everything else that goes into preparing this podcast. I do that for the love of it, but it would be great to, get paid for that. So if you would love to help me get there, please consider becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/stageworthy. Patrons get early access to episodes. We have some conversations about things in Canadian theater. And you know what? The more people who join the Patreon, the more I'll ultimately be able to offer my patrons. So if that's of interest to you, if you like Stageworthy and want to help me make it, please go to patreon.com/stageworthy. My guest next week is Peter Fernandez. Peter is an award-winning theater creator, actor, assistant director. He's directing his first full show for the first time at the Shaw Festival. He's directing Sleuth at the Shaw Festival. I loved this conversation. I hadn't had the opportunity to chat with Peter before, and I really enjoyed this conversation, and you will too next week on Stageworthy. Please tune in.